just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other.
Karen Levin is a passionate education professional and outdoor enthusiast currently living a nomadic life centered around national parks. Karen has a strength as an educator and a robust understanding of how people learn both in and out of the classroom. She believes in building strong relationships and listening to those closest to the issues. Karen has spent over a decade in education, first as a high school math teacher, next as director of Zeroing In on Math at a Boston nonprofit, and then she founded Summit Strategy Consulting, where math and meetings hit their peak. Karen also co-founded the United Women's Ball Hockey Foundation in 2015 with 3 other passionate ball hockey leaders, affectionately known as Coach Karen, another coach on the call today. In the ball hockey community, Karen and her green Crocs lead skills clinics for youth and adults, focusing on using small games to teach big concepts. Karen is the Chief Operating Officer for the UWBHF. Karen has been a member of Team USA's women's ball hockey since 2015, competing in 8 international tournaments, with her 9th coming up in June in Switzerland. Congrats to her. Just came out that she's been named to the US team again this year. Karen has 5 silver medals and 1 gold medal during her time competing at the international level. Karen began her hockey career at age 5 in ice hockey, progressing to play 4 years of Division III college ice hockey and golf at Middlebury College. She won 2 national ice hockey championships at Middlebury. After arriving in Boston, Karen discovered a local adult ball hockey league, the BSSC, and began her career as a ball hockey athlete. She loves to combine her 2 passions, hockey and travel, to see the world and expand her horizons. Karen, welcome to the PAC Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Well, there's so much that we could jump into. I guess what I want to start to root out and understand is your journey. So very interesting professional path, teacher, nonprofit, and now you have your own business. Maybe just share some insight into that progression for you and how that came about.
Sure. I was a math major in college, and when I thought about what I was going to do there, I wasn't really sure. You could kind of be like a professor, and that wasn't really my path. You could kind of do like actuarial things, not my path, or you could teach. And I really was grateful to go into teaching. So I started my career teaching in the city of Boston at a charter school, and really enjoyed the daily interactions with students. It's the hardest job I have ever had and will ever have, is being in a classroom, learning how to interact with students and engage 14, 15-year-olds who are mandated by law to be there. I had to talk math 5 periods a day, and they were just mandated by law to sit there. And in order to engage them, you really have to learn how to do that well, to have a good experience. And so I focused on that for 6 years, really enjoyed it. I did a policy fellowship through Teach Plus, which is an education organization, and they were interested in like thinking bigger. And that kind of got me to think, okay, how might I not only impact the students in my classroom, maybe 75 to 100 kids per year, but how do I think a little bit more broadly? That got me interested in thinking that way. And so I decided to leave the classroom and see what else was out there. I quit that position without anything lined up. And I was like, okay, don't really know how this is going to go, but we'll see what happens and go for it. So that was a little bit scary, but I was able to find a position through a fellowship, and I worked at a Boston-based nonprofit in math education for the next 6 years. They do arts education, math education, career pathways education, lots of different things in the city of Boston. And I led the math initiative. And so I was doing that, did that for 6 years. And maybe year 4 was COVID. And schools went remote, our organization went remote, and I happened to be living in a garden level basement apartment in the city of Boston. It was my treat yourself year. I got my own place. I had no roommates. It was delightful. And I was really enjoying it until we went remote. And then I was living in a basement and working out in a basement and working in a basement. Everything was just in a basement. And that was just, that was not great. And so we hadn't been called back to the office yet. And I had given some advice to a coworker, hey, we don't need to be here, go visit some family, whatever. When I was looking for apartments, she said, Karen, you don't have to be in Boston. And I said, that's right, I don't. So I started traveling and working remote for the nonprofit. Schools were still remote, so we were just Zooming in to support teachers. And did that for maybe a year or year and a half during COVID. And then when they called us back to the office, I was having too much fun adventuring around. I had centered all of my nomadic life around outdoor spaces because during COVID, you couldn't go inside, but you could go rock climbing or hiking or whatever you were doing. And I could spend 8 hours outside at Red Rocks outside Vegas, on Saturday and Sunday, and then show up back to work and be a pretty happy person. Whereas my coworkers were calling in and looked a little bit miserable in snowy Boston in February. So I ended up leaving that position because they wanted us back in person. And so I didn't know what I was going to do after that. And I decided to continue traveling, and I started my own consulting business. And it's been a real journey for the last 3 years doing that, trying to figure out how to support schools and support businesses in meeting facilitation, all while doing this nomadic lifestyle.
Freedom, autonomy, those are maybe the first 2 words that come up. It seems important to you, and there's maybe share, if you could, just some insight into why the nomadic life is so important to you. And it sounds like you got that taste when you went virtual during COVID, like nothing, you couldn't go back. Is that right?
Yeah, it was just a very unique way to live. And I would have traveled to all the places that I went to, but living there for 2 or 3 or 5 months was just a different kind of way of being. And I really enjoyed that. There's so many places in the last 3 years have been all US and Canada. There's so many places to see in just the US and Canada. We've done all of this driving so far, except for one stint in Europe last summer. But yeah, it's just been really like, when am I going to do this? I have no responsibilities at the moment in terms of like tied to a place. And this felt like the right time, the season of life to do it.
And before we bring Coach Nick in here, because I want to get his insights, how's it going? How's the new business going? And what's been the best part?
The new business has been good. It's been really, really interesting. I didn't plan to be a business owner necessarily, but jumping in has been really fun. I've learned a lot about how I like to work. I am definitely an introvert, which is maybe counter to being a teacher. You're on all day. At the nonprofit, I was in a lot of meetings. And what I really like about this style of work is I can plan my day so that I can get blocks of time to be really thinking. So I maybe have some work, and I don't stop it when I have a meeting. I stop it when I'm done with that thing. And that depth of work is really one thing I've appreciated the most about this style of work. I found that networking has been the greatest part to growing the business. So working with connections that I already knew and connections of connections. And that's been a huge learning because I'm not someone who will reach out to promote myself or things like that. But I've learned that just having a coffee chat, checking in with people and connecting has been really useful in growing the business.
So much cool stuff. Really, really like great. Thanks for sharing that, Karen. I just loved hearing your journey because as always, it takes me on a journey as you're going through and sharing with your journey. And I'm thinking about the things that, how my life has been and what similarities there are as well. But I'd love to go back to pretty much the start, if that's okay. And you talked about being in the classroom and engaging kids that are mandated to be there, right? Like, the frame of that is also like set up for failure in some ways, right? And it's a lot of what me and coach do is help people get what they want. And like, it's I prefer to work with adults because it's much easier. And not about just being a parent, right? It's like that's much easier to work with adults than oftentimes it is to work with my kids. And so, what would you say your top tips are for threading the needle between knowing what you've got to share is really important for them, and ultimately they'll be very thankful for that. But actually having them to be able to engage and make that work. And what would you say was the most important pieces that you would share on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's going to connect a lot with everything that you just said. Like, it's that relationship building piece that all humans, whether they're 14 or 44, want. They want that connection with another person, and they want you to care about them as individuals. And that was huge in teaching. It's a different environment. You have a lot more relationships to maintain, but seeing students as humans and with full lives and dreams and desires and all that is the secret sauce of anything, right? Teaching, coaching, relationships and organizations is the biggest piece. And the way that you run a group is extremely like interesting, I think. So in the classroom, the way that I think a lot of people think of teaching as I need to explain this really well. That is not, that is presenting, and that's one skill. And teaching is really like engagement. So how do I get them to do the thinking and the students to do the work? Like, I know the math, they need to know the math. And so designing activities, I feel like I was a designer more than anything. I was designing situations in which they would learn mathematics, and people like that. That's when people want to try things out and fail and learn themselves. And if you can design your classroom or your meeting or your environment like that, that's how people learn.
Oh, so cool. I often think about what I do is, from a group perspective, it's just like I'm just there to create the environment for everything else to grow inside it. Just like hold that. And it's like more about, for me. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Karen. It's that you talked about the design of it. So I love that language. It's there. How you set it, for me, it's like how you set it up from the start is the biggest piece to what you're going to get from it when you're actually in it, and therefore the outcome from it. It's like the more time you spend on the preparation, the more flow you'll get in the execution, and the more magic that you'll get, because you don't know what you're going to get, right? It's like I'm going to put all these cool things together. It's like, let's see what kind of cool stuff gets created.
Yeah. Like let me think of an example. Like, people are going to hate me, but let's do fractions. This is like people like absolutely like shut down with this, right? Like, I don't know, what were your experiences in math? Give me like a little, like, how do you feel about
fractions?
it?
And I went, oh,
exactly.
no, like next question.
Yeah,
What about you, Josh?
Yeah, enough to be dangerous. I actually liked math, so maybe a notch above Coach Nick on this one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, fractions are so difficult, and kids learn those in like third, fourth, and fifth grade. And it's really, really hard concept. But, let's say we have half a cup of milk, and I want to know how many fourths fit in there, right? I had a lesson where I was actually having kids make no-bake cookies in the classroom. And this kid ran up to me, and he's like, I only gave them certain measuring cups, and I only gave them like a fourth measuring cup or something like that, and they had to make a half. And he's like, fill it twice. And I was like, how do you know that? And he's like, well, because two, go in. But he couldn't have told me that 2/4 go into 1/2, like on paper. But he knew it. He saw it in the measuring cup. Look, it's a fourth. Like, two of these make that. And those sorts of experiences. Now he learned that, and he could understand why a fourth is smaller and a half is bigger, and why these go into these ones. And so, those sorts of experiences I could have designed that lesson where I was like, how many fourths go into 1/2 in writing? Or I could design it where they're making something and they see it happen. And that one where they saw it happen is more salient to the students.
Yeah. You got to experience the learning to really get the learning. Yeah, like you don't learn it, and yeah, that's really cool.
I'm wondering how you relate this. You mentioned in the intro here that you coach hockey lessons as well. So a lot of that is, I can remember just my practices, and I've run some practices myself for youth hockey, but you want to create an environment that feels very game-like. So maybe just share like how your experience in the classroom and what you just mentioned has prepared you for sports coaching as well.
Yeah, I take a lot of that from my college coach, he's been at Middlebury since I think the year I was born. And both the Middlebury coaches designed small games to teach stuff. So at a higher level, more than I'm thinking more of like folks who already know how to skate and move and stick handle and pass. Any game was designed to teach you something. So there would often be a rule, and maybe that rule was like once you get possession of the puck, someone else comes in from this angle, and that taught you that that's where the person will be cutting during a game situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you were just playing a game, and you took whatever the rule was, you did it. But it really taught you that in a full 5-on-5 game, that's where the person will be cutting in. And I thought that was genius in the way that those were designed to make us learn something, and super fun. We had a blast at practice, so it was just a great time.
That's such a great point. That's something that I'm going to start to adopt, because we run youth clinics that last about an hour, and we say, the first half is going to be something instructional. We're going to teach some fundamentals, maybe have you learn something new, and then we'll, I probably say this unconsciously, like we'll have some fun in the second half of it. It's like, no, the fun should be part of the game, should be part of the learning process too. And so that's what I'm hearing from you is like even the practice of it, like you can make that fun. You can put a game inside of like the learning, so that all of it is fun, and they probably get it and they grasp it better and can apply it to game situations even better then.
Yeah, even for stick handling, right? Like a very basic thing. I'm teaching kids to pick their heads up, and we'll play a game called Queen of the Circle, and everyone's in a circle, and it's knockout basically. Everyone has their own ball, and they knock someone else out, and they're still in, but they have to keep their head up, they have to use their body, they have to protect the ball, and that's super duper fun, and they're learning. I need to keep my head up.
Such a great example. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd like to transition a little bit. I mean, I want to stay in the sports theme here, but there's so much in your intro and your bio about like being a top level athlete. Like you've achieved the top of multiple sports here, multiple versions of hockey. And I don't know, I think people maybe have a perception of athletes who are really talented, have a certain personality, and you come across and you even, you're self-assessed like introvert. And I would just like to hear something about your sports and playing career, about like how your personality gelled, or like how you integrated who you were into your sports success. And maybe just a quick shout out before you answer that question. Tim Hickey is a buddy of mine who plays in the Charlotte area now, and he's got some familiarity with you and your game style, and he's played with you, and he called you the smartest hockey player he's ever played with before. So shout out to Tim. I just thought that was a cool compliment to you, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. That's really special. I appreciate that. Yeah, Tim and I played together for many years in the Boston Ski and Sports Club, and I think my style is I like, my greatest asset is seeing the rink, and as an introvert and someone who likes to kind of sit back and observe, I have a very good understanding of where everyone is on the rink at all times, and I can see like who's cutting and make pass to where they're going to be, and make those sort of maybe I'm looking one way, but I know they're there, and I can make that pass back, and it distracts the goalie and the defenders, and that is one of my greatest assets. And so that ability to sit back and observe, and then use that information in my game has been huge. Team wise is interesting because as an introvert, I'm definitely on the quieter side. In a locker room, I'm not the one who's up dancing and, in a pre-game situation, I like to play game. I don't want to like say super focused before a game. Like I can't think about the game too much. That messes
To
me
stay
up.
loose. Yeah.
And I want to be playing. So I bring a hacky sack or a soccer ball and play just so I can move a little bit, get warmed up. And it's just really fun because I'm terrible at it. And so trying to keep a hacky sack up when you're really bad just means you like jump around a lot and let it hit the ground a lot. So that failure before a game is really helpful just to play. And then when you get a good, if everyone touches the ball in the circle and you're so excited, it's team bonding. So I really try to get people like having fun. Like I said, like I think for me, I play best when I'm having fun and connected to my teammates. And if we can design, like we were talking about before, if we can design the conditions where the team feels connected and the team's having a good time, those two things are big keys to success for any team.
I'd like to kind of tie this all together right before we head into like the mind scan portion of our connection today. But so far we've covered making it fun in the classroom for kids. There's overlap with sports coaching, making it fun for them, even like your national teams and yourself and your own preparation of making it fun. Do you incorporate that into your consulting practice too? I'd love to just have you talk about maybe defining success for you and what that might look like in your business, and like how much of that do you think about fun for, like, because it's with adults, right? You're coaching and consulting the people who are implementing policies or instruction. Like how much of that do you teach them to like have fun with what they're doing?
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's a huge piece of the consulting. When I first connect with someone, I really want to understand what are your goals and how are you trying to get there, and really listening to what they've tried and so on, and then we'll incorporate that fun. So it really depends on what their goals are, but for organizations. I've done something called Staff Olympics, which is really like a big organization-wide like connection, and you just play games together. Everyone picks a country name and has some silly times playing together. And those experiences, although they aren't necessarily connected to directly to your day job in an organization, the ability to connect with your coworker on a different level and play together is a really important aspect of groups and businesses, and so on. You can do this with adults, with kids. They're like minute to win it style games. In terms of meetings too, like I want people to like for any meeting that I run, I want people to probably both of these things, speak and laugh in the first 5 minutes. If I can get people to turn to a partner and talk and laugh and then come back and have the meeting, your meeting is going to be a much more engaged situation, with adults, with kids. That goes for really any group of people that you have together. And I think that's a huge piece of like making sure that there's these connections between people. And you asked about like, how do I define success?
Yes.
I took this question more as like on the human level rather than like business, but I think at least in general, I try to live according to like my values. And those are adventure, health, authenticity, knowledge, contribution, and family and friendship. So if I can find a way to continue to adventure, to be my authentic self, to share some knowledge, to be healthy, and to have family and friends around, I feel like I'm doing pretty good in whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's my business or my sports or whatever.
You rattled those off so quickly that it tells me you probably spend a lot of time on that, but you've been practicing them for a while. Can you repeat them? Just go a little bit slower on those values there.
Sure. Adventure, health, authenticity, knowledge and contribution, family and friendship.
Awesome. And maybe just before we do jump into Mindscan, how did you come up with those? Like, where those just like speak to your heart, I guess, is what's coming across for me. But like, how did you define those?
Pretty much. There's a bunch of different activities you can do, like values finders, and they're more or less lists of words, and you have to narrow it down to 3 to 5. And
Gotcha.
I've done that a few times now in a few different scenarios, and then writing them out has been really nice because it helps make decisions. If I have a decision, I'm like, should I do this? It's like, does this fit in these, categories, or not? And that's okay too. This season of life for me is these values, and maybe another season would change, but right now this is where my head's at.
I'm going to yield to Coach Nick because I'd like to get in here and steal the show, but maybe just leave it to Coach Nick with his first observations here. So, of course, we have on the screen here your mind scan results. Coach Nick, what pops off the screen to you first here? What do you see?
Well, as always, I direct anyone that's listening, watching, wants to know more about MindScan overall to our MindScan episode. What episode is it, Coach? 180?
183,
183?
Something like that. I can confirm.
I think it's a round number.
There.
I think it's a round number, but MindScan episode, it's easy to search to get more in depth on what MindScan is overall. But I think so. It's important contextually to get a bit of context here. And so we're looking at the MindScan graph here, 6 different areas or 6 different lines you can look at. And so there's 3 fundamental ways that we think, and those are in the middle there in the purple. So left to right, the relator is people, and the doer, which is in the middle, is action and innovation, where things could be. And then on the right-hand side, it's structure and process. And those are the external references that I make there. And so those 3 are the fundamentals. Then the 3 at the top are the way that you see the outside world on those 3. And the 3 in the bottom are the way that you see yourself with those 3. So it gives us 6 areas to measure. And then in the measurement, we've got the scale from +10 to -10. So 2 extremes, like massively overvaluing something so much so it's like to a fault, and then massively discarding something so much so to a fault, essentially. And then the circle that we have, which is on the scale somewhere, that denotes how clear you are, how zoomed out you are in a particular area. So a big blue circle, like you can see the whole picture, and a small maroon circle, you can see a smaller piece of the pie. Right? And so that's contextually how we're looking at this, right? And so what I'm always looking for are, where are the biggest extremes relative? And it's super interesting, Karen, as I look at this, what actually jumps out for me is the practical thinking here, right? So middle top, that is where you're the clearest. So practical thinking is around taking action, moving forward, getting results, just moving fast. And so someone who is on the opposite end to where you're at, so someone who's like a +10, that person will take a lot of action, move very fast. And because of taking lots of action and moving very fast, they get a lot of results. But the potential downside of that extremity is that you'll take too much risk on. Might fall in your face a little bit. Now, where you are, you've got this big blue circle, so you can see like the whole puzzle in terms of what action you could take. So that really fits in with the birth of experience that you've shared with us today, in being those different environments. So you're able to see that there are many different courses of action you could take to get a result. Now, which means it gives you agility for where you want to move up and down the scale. But when you took this mind scan, you actually were like -7, -8, something like that. So what the mind scan is saying is you've got a lot of ways that you can see that you could take action and get results. But your mind thinking patterns right now are around more caution when it comes to taking action. I want to make sure that the 2 other areas which are higher up are okay before you take action. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on that, Karen, because you can see that there's lots of action available, ways to win, but you're going to be more cautious. So someone who might be a -10, so even further down than where you are there, that person really will not move because they're thinking about what could go wrong rather than what could go right. And so I'd love your thoughts on that before I even share any other areas as to how you see that for you right now.
Yeah, I think that is that rings true a lot. I definitely, when I think things through, see a lot of different ways, and I'm very cautious about making the decision and moving forward. So I would say that's very true. That rings very true.
Because interesting, so if you look on the right-hand side, top right there, structured thinking. So you've got a lot of clarity there as well. So the structured thinking is about process, systems. and you're bang in the middle of that. And really, like the left-hand side empathy is similar in terms of where you are. So you've got the balance on those two. So with the structure thinking, you can see that you could put a lot of structure around something, a lot of organization, but you're also willing to go to the other side of it, where you could say, I get the opportunity where you could just move forward and not be like struck down by having to make sure everything's organized. So that's a really good place to be in terms of that flexibility. The potential downside of being in the middle is that you see both sides equally. So it makes it harder to make decisions. And because your action one is down the bottom part, right? You're seeing on the structure, okay, I could add a lot of structure, create a lot of organization here, but I also see the value of just going with it. And then because your action is lower, like you're going to defer to that, like, let's wait and see. And then your left hand side, which is the empathy, which is people, slightly less clear, but still very clear on like knowing people, understanding people. Again, you're kind of in the middle. So someone who's extreme on people, +10, is overly a people person, like spends lots and lots of time with people to their fault, where they perhaps give people too many chances and often might be seen as a walkover. Certainly not where you are. And then the opposite extreme of that is where people just really aren't willing to trust at all, and that's not where you are. And so you've got like these two pieces on the empathy, where you've got some middle ground, and then on the structure you've got some middle ground as well. So you can go wherever you want with those two. It's really that practical thinking which kind of defines where you go. So which is really intriguing for me, because because you're so clear that you can probably see things other way. And so perhaps what feels like a lot of action to you, just to know that you've got a lot of runway until you get to the place where it's risky. So you could probably feel like a big difference to you, but just get up to like about halfway.
Yeah, I like that. I like that framing, right? If I'm feeling like this is very risky, it's probably like in a real risk scale, quite a bit lower than what would be. I like that a lot. That's interesting.
And obviously it goes without saying, but I'll say it because it's really important, that you just get to choose, right? Like it's up to you. And you might say, I'm totally fine with where I am, but like, it's so cool because that's what's great about MindScan, is you can start to open up different worlds. It's like, well, what if I got really push myself really to take some action here, and just got, like you said, just get above that zero line. What would the potential mean for me in my life? And so then that ties into the bottom half, but I'll let Coach Josh take over from that, because ultimately that's about what you want.
Yeah, just maybe a last comment about the external world here. So Coach Dick and I look for this a lot in our clients. When we coach, C-level people or even business owners of this, what I like to call this inverted triangle, right? So for you, like the two that you lead with in your thinking, or that you're prioritizing the most, is people and process, right? And so what's cool about the action kind of taking a backseat to that is that's your clearest one. So yes, there might be some caution, but once you get to that certainty that you're looking for, there's no hesitate. Like you see it so clearly that that's what it is for you. And when we talk about scaling a business, or like I think about the lifestyle that you're living, right? Nomadic lifestyle. Like you've crafted this like process is probably very key for you. You see that clearly. There's got to be some systems in place for you to be able to live this lifestyle, right? To have the number of clients to be able to support yourself, but also like to have this balance of the life that you love to live here. So I just thought that was cool. I want to make that comment. Does that resonate with you, Karen, as well?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm interested to hear a little bit more, because I think, at least when I've thought about like my work style in the past and the things that are my strengths, and how I kind of like to work, I often find myself gravitating toward a very decisive leader and being like the second person, right? And so being the person who sees everything, makes like here are the pros and cons list, and then gravitating to someone who's like, I'm willing to make that decision and move forward. And so that's kind of how I've thought about myself in a lot of ways. And having my own business has pushed me in new directions, because I am the decision maker, and I am the one who will take the risks or say no to something and make the choices.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that's probably pushing you in that direction, right? You're probably drawn to that other person who's decisive because it's a balance for you, right? And there's things that you could explore there, right? Are there fears? Like if you act too fast, what are you scared of? Or like why is it valuable to you to be cautious? right? It's all, when I first took the mind scan, I was like, well, my circle's down here. Like, how do I fix that? It's not about correcting something. It's about understanding why it is the way it is. And then like that knowledge of self comes through, and that like, that's the actual growth opportunity there of like, just knowing why things are in place. That's all.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, it's been a fear of failure, right? Like, and having so much quote unquote success, right? If you look at the bio or whatever, like, oh, so successful, but
Yeah.
at the same time, not learning how to fail. I was good at school, I was good at sports and all the things, right? And so, learning to like be okay with like doing something and it not working out is a huge learning and an important piece of like learning how to be just a full human.
Yeah. Yeah, because even the failure, you have to take the action, right? Like the biggest failure maybe is not taking the action, because then we don't get
Right.
that feedback. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for your insight there. So yeah, just kind of dipping down to the internal. So like Coach Nick was saying, that relator, doer, thinker. So people, actions, and process turns into how you view yourself in these areas. So self-empathy, maybe one of the mind scans with some of the most clarity I've seen, that green clarity, and that being your, it makes sense to me after having a couple conversations with you, but such a strength to know yourself. It's a very rare when we look at these mind scans. The action, the doer, turns into the role awareness. So with the roles that you're playing, and then the self-direction is that thinker, where you're headed. So obviously you're leading with this one as far as, what we call bias here. So something you pay the most of attention to is, where should I be? How should I be practicing my values? What am I capable of? So you have such a strong commitment to where you're going, Coach Nick, and I love coaching people like this, because like we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time. And also to realize that, Coach Nick mentioned sometimes to a fault, right? So if we're all the way up there, you can see in the reading here in the summary, just a little bit of idealism, maybe some, self-demanding, really hard on yourself, or like there's some degree of like maybe a perfectionism that might come through. And even if you're successful, yeah, but I could have done this, or like I still have to get here. And that could be a good thing, right? It serves you. It's going to keep driving you forward, but maybe some grace and some space and like redefining, like, or matching even like what success looks like for you. That's why we love to ask that question, right? Because we can achieve that. And like, there's no way if you achieve it, you can't say, oh yeah, but it was like, well, no, this is what we were shooting for here. So just wondering how that sits with you, that self-direction in particular, and then we can go into the other two dimensions here.
Yeah, I want to learn more about this mind scan because I feel like it's done a really good job of of nailing me. But I think even the first year that I started my business, I said I want to just make ends meet. That's all I would like to do. I want to make sure I can make, living this nomadic lifestyle, make rent and food and all the things. And I did that, and then I still didn't feel good about it. And I was this is the exact
Funny
thing.
how
I
that
was
works,
like,
huh?
yeah, I was like, I literally set this goal and I did this goal and I'm not satisfied. And, what's going on with that? And, that's a really interesting, it's not a fun way to live, but like you said, it's also like it serves to continue motivating me to keep going.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, a bit of human nature, right? It gives us the juice, because we wanted, like everything we have right now, we wanted at some time, but we always want more. Isn't that's your quote, I think, Coach Nick, right? I don't want everything. I just want more.
that shout out to Coach Matt Trinkon. That was his.
Yeah.
This is actually a really important point, Karen, because there's always going to be more, right? There's always going to be more, and if we're going towards an ideal of what that might be, then it's like going towards the horizon. It's like, doesn't matter how far you walk, it's going to be further away. But if you walk 100 miles towards the horizon and look backwards, you're like, wow, look how far I came, right? And that's the antidote to that piece. And so that self-direction is something that you should hold on to, but you should also make sure to know that, like, you want to look backwards and measure where you've come from, not where you're going. And then that will allow it. You won't have to squeeze it quite so tight. You still hold it, but not quite so tight. And then that will allow you to be more open to, like, well, if I take action, it's not that I'll fail. It's just that I'll either get what I want or I'll learn something else. And that will give you more like flow when it pertains to that practical thinking, because you'll do more things without thinking about the gravity, because the gravity won't be there anymore, because you're you're making it up on your path. It's not an ideal that's outside of you if you're measuring backwards. So you get this double whammy effect there where you actually can get clearer about where you want to go and it feel lighter for you to get there. So you get this kind of double effect. And that's the biggest thing actually that jumps out for me in those combination. That's your biggest opportunity in the mind scan is to leverage your great view of what you see in terms of action and allow yourself to do it by measuring backwards. To your point around like going, well, I did hit my goals, but I didn't feel great. It's because you're still looking forward. You just look back and go, like, well, look where I was and look where I am now. I didn't have a business. Now I have a business. My goal in my business was to get to this. Now I did it. Look where I was. How cool am I? And it allows you to go, oh, what else can I do now? Versus, well, yeah, it could be this big as well, or it could be this thing, or it could be doing something else. And so, and why do I know this? Because like it's the human function, right? But and so like we all do that. But yeah, the more that we can lean in and practice that, the more that you'll have of that good stuff there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, because I think like I do practically or like logically, I'm with you on these, and I've had the same thing. I'm like, wow, that was really cool. And then there's something that disconnects with the feelings of it, right? And so how do you think about, or how do you match those two pieces where you can look back and be like, that was really cool, that there's still a feeling attached to it, and like, how do you dig in there?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So when you define what success is, because that's definitely a question I have. So like, if my success is my business this year is to make ends meet, and that actually means being able to pay rent and just being able to live through it. And then you get to that period and you hit that goal. And then what if I don't feel good about it? What if I don't feel the things I think I should feel? It's like, well, that's just up to you, Karen. That's just, you don't believe yourself when you set things out. Right? It's like you're undermining your own goals, right? Like you get to decide. Right. And so it's just telling yourself and say, look, this is the thing I want. And being clear about like knowing you don't want to undermine your own goals. Right. To say like, oh yes, there's still more that I want to get. But that period of time and that what I set out, I won that. And now what game do I want to play now? Right. You said a while back on the top of the call, right? Like I thought was really fascinating. Going into almost 10 years of being in this team, it's really cool to see how the team's evolved and the set of people that are in. But you've had to play every single year. And each one of those years you can look at just by itself and look at those years and say, did we win or lose? And then you could zoom out and look at like that 9 years and say the same thing, right? So it's you decide how you want to look at it, set your own parameters to success and get committed to those. And so so perhaps what I'd posit around for you on that piece then, Karen, is that part of that perhaps isn't that making ends meet was your real goal. Maybe underneath that you thought, maybe I could do better than that. Maybe you just said, well, ends meet will be okay, but what I really want might be this other thing. But you didn't put it out there because what if I don't get it, right? And that's ultimately something that me and coach see all the time, right? People go for a goal that they think that they really want. It's a big thing, but they're actually editing themselves because the thing that they really want, they're scared that it's too much and they can't get it. And then you get the goal and you're like, oh, that's not what I want at all. So there's two things there to play with. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're like, oh, was the goal not what the actual goal was? And then just like, believe myself, or like believe yourself about it, basically. Yeah. Seemed like the two.
And that believing yourself also is a muscle, right? It's practice on that front as well. And the more that you do it, the more that you will. I mean, you talked about with your clients, right? I want to find out what do they want and where are they and what's the plan to get there, right? It's the same thing. It's like it's like, this is what I want. It's like, well, is that really what you want? Are you sure? And like just giving yourself that prod and poke, like kick the tires. Like, is that really true? Is that really what I want? It's like, well, yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, but is that really what you want? It's like, well, yeah, it'd be all right. But we tend to keep going over that same line of question. It's like, just say what you really want, right? Because you might not get it, but there's definitely there's a big chance you won't get it if you don't define what it is. Like, it's not going to come and slap you in the face. But yeah, so really, really cool, like setup you got in the mind scan there. Coach, I know you got a couple more things there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and just in response to her last question about like the goal setting, I think of, you mentioned like fear of failure, right? So maybe you subconsciously set a goal that you knew not only that you could get, but like you had to get, right? Like you had to sustain yourself. So you were gonna get that anyway, no matter what. you're going to find a way to scratch and claw. So, and this is why Coach Nick and I love what we do, is because we create that space to really like, no, what do you actually want? Like, what would actually be great? What feels like it would stretch you to get it? And then one of my favorite quotes of all time is that we never set goals to achieve them. We think we do. We think we're going to get a feeling when we achieve something, but setting high goals are important because it's about the person we become in pursuit of that really, really big thing. That really is the rewarding part. That's the looking back of the 100 miles or whatever units that Coach Nick said, like moving towards the horizon. Well, we had to be a certain person to like walk all that way or to travel all that way. So that's like, it's an art and a science, right? To setting big goals. And it's also about the transformation of yourself in pursuit of it. That is actually the really rewarding thing versus like the accomplishment of the goal at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that resonate?
Yeah,
with you?
for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just maybe some parting words here. I mentioned, so this will maybe be some reading for you. We'll send you the full results at the end here. But this is, I think, I don't want to undersell this. Super cool. Maybe your greatest strength in the whole mind skin is to have this clarity in your self-empathy, ability to know yourself. Like a lot of the questions that you're asking, you have great intuition. And you'll read in this is like, trust that more. Like you might actually even talk yourself out of what you want with your logic mind versus like what you feel in your heart. And your heart is very strong here with this clarity in your self-empathy. And then maybe being honest here about that role awareness. There's it's the lowest clarity and also the lowest bias internal. There's just some, like, you're not reaching your full potential. There's something there of like, might be some good introspective questions about what that is. Like, what is that about? And sometimes those can be some tougher conversations of like being honest with yourself about what are you leaving on the table or what really makes you tick and why are you not doing more of that? But there's some opportunity with that role awareness as well.
Interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any final questions or observations from you, Karen, about the mind scan, your results here?
Tell me a little bit more about the role awareness piece. Like, can you give me maybe an example of, how that looks or, someone who's similar and how they've gone?
Sure. So this is the doer to the internal. So this is the way things could be. And this is how you identify yourselves in the roles that you play. All right. So when I see a score like this, it just means that there's something being left out on the table. There's more for you there. You realize that there's a higher potential for you. And especially in relation to the other two, like the other two areas are just taking more of a priority. So that's reason number one. It might be where it is because you prioritize your self-empathy the way that you feel and where you're going. So this just says, we have a great exercise. Maybe we can share this after our time with you as well, as a sweet spot analysis. And it's a combination of what we call the 3 Ps, your passion, your purpose, and your profit. And how much of your day do you spend loving what you do? You're naturally good at it, and it's the economic driver of your business. And there's probably bits and pieces where you do that and, you feel like you're in the zone and you love it. Like you'll maybe work on something or perform an exercise with your team or a client and like time just like 2 hours just go by. The message here is that like, let's make that be like 70% of the time that you spend in that. And maybe you're just getting a little inkling, but there's something there with like, maybe there's like paperwork, like as a business owner, right? There's so many things that take our attention because it has to, right? It has to be done. So maybe your energy just might be drained with things you'd rather not be doing versus like the reason that you actually got in this in the first place, which is, to make a difference and an impact with people and with kids.
Awesome. Thank you. That's helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So as we begin to wrap, I know that we want to leave space for, shout out or just your oversight into the ball hockey community and what you're doing there. I know that you established that years ago. I'd love to hear more about that organization and what your goals are and what you're looking to accomplish if you want to share that, Karen.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the United Women's Ball Hockey Foundation, we're advocating for girls and women in the sport of ball hockey. And ball hockey is predominantly male sport. And we wanted something for women by women and started this about 9 years ago and have really transformed from the first maybe 5 or 6 years, kind of up through COVID, was really centered around how do we get opportunities for women to have women's only tournaments and skills clinics. Most women come to the sport through other sports. I didn't even know this was a sport until I went to Boston and started playing in the BSSC. And most people don't either. Very few of my teammates have played ball hockey growing up. There's maybe 3 to 5 players on the U.S. team that started as a kid. And so then we kind of changed gears a little bit during COVID and became more of a community building organization, an organization that really wanted to bring women together because we couldn't physically be together during COVID. And now we're thinking about how do we advocate for women at local league level, national level, and global level with the international competitions, making sure that women have equal access to locker rooms, equal access to practice times. In the upcoming tournament, I don't know officially how many teams, but maybe 6 women's teams and probably 35 to 40 men's teams. And we'd love to see that number be equal. We'd love to see all the countries have a women's team internationally, and be able to have so many more women playing the sport. What I think is unique about this sport is the community aspect of it. There's something about ball hockey that people, when you ask them about it, it's sort of like family, friends, like community, and that is happens in a lot of sports, but I think there's something special about ball hockey with it. So we want to get more folks in that space.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just from building what we're building here in Charlotte here, I've seen that firsthand. It's a lot of the feedback that we get, that the community aspect is like what people enjoy the most. And especially with our program being so new, this is something that we could definitely benefit from. So I want to ask this question, for viewers out there that might be in other areas too. How should they get in touch with you? Like what sort of resources or help can you provide? Maybe newer programs or programs that want to leverage more of their women's or female presence in this.
Yeah, mentorship is the biggest way that we do that. Have them get in touch with me, Levin at UWBHF.org. Could send you that follow-up, or info at UWBHF.org. And we will just get them connected. We're a small organization right now, and we can just get them connected to the right person who could help them with whatever their issue is. Lots of other local orgs have had the same issue. Mm-hmm. And we'll just connect them with whoever that person is that could say, oh, you're having trouble recruiting women. Here's how we did it. Oh, you're having trouble retaining women. Here's how we did that. You're having trouble progressing women. Like you have a lot of women and they want to get better. Here's how we did that. And we can get them connected with whoever is the right person.
Perfect. I have a few contacts that I'll be in touch with. And I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think women feel very siloed in the sport, and especially if the local community is really small for women. And I think getting into a larger organization, a group that kind of connects across the U.S., Canada, and connections in the U.K., and we're hoping when we go to Switzerland, we'll have connections in Czech Republic and Slovakia, and just getting all the women connected. We're having the same issues. Across the country and U.S. and Canada, and so just getting women to talk to each other and then use that support is going to be really good for the sport overall. You get more women in leadership positions, women in decision making. That is an incredibly important element to this this game.
Yeah. Definitely, and a good reminder that the community aspect is not just resigned to geography, right? So, for example, we have like roughly 10 women in our local league here, but for them to know, oh, there's a whole network like of other women that play this sport other places, and this is how they did it. Like, I think they'll feel really supported and adopt some of those policies to help grow it locally here.
Yeah, I mean, it's very cool what you can do when you kind of like you connect with someone who's in the same position. Like I'm currently in California. It's a very small community, not a lot of women play, and that would be a great community to connect with. There were very few women in Vegas. I think I was the only one going out, but then you go to Boston where I was for 15 years, and there's so many women. It's a different style, right? And their needs are different. So getting folks just connected is just incredible.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. I would love to give the last word to you, something, principle from today that was a good reminder for you, or maybe even something that you learned or want to implement moving forward, something that was a good takeaway from our time together today.
For me personally, I think it was really interesting hearing the different strengths and areas for growth and what I'm like kind of valuing. And I thought the risk takeaway was really interesting. What feels risky for me might not be actually risky. I thought that was really powerful. And I definitely want to do more personal thinking on the aspect of like, where am I? The middle one and the bottom, I forget, it was like role something or other.
Role awareness, yep. Mm-hmm.
Role awareness. And I think that would be really great. I think overall, I felt a lot of connections with you and Nick in thinking about how to design experiences for people, and just the way that you set something up for a group can really make all the difference. So adding that design element of fun that we talked about, adding the design element of getting other people to be engaged and do the work, and people talking and smiling and laughing, it makes a huge difference in any scenario, from classroom, hockey team, meeting space, larger company, gathering, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Very well said, well put. You crushed it today, Karen. Thank you for joining PAC Podcast, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you out in the rink at some point in time in the future here.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.